and was instrumental in bringing women's philanthropy and the Lion of Judah program into Ann Arbor. She served as both campaign chair and as board president. It was during her presidency in 1996 to 98 that Federation embarked on its first communal survey and planning process. Her impact on the community and on those who had the opportunity to work with her, myself included, as she was instrumental in launching Hillel at EMU. Call her a friend is enduring. Evie was never rested on good enough. She recognized the importance of building communal infrastructure that was engaged and prepared for whatever the future may hold. This past year has brought some of the greatest challenges to our community that our community has ever endured here, locally, on our streets, in our neighborhood, and overseas. But thanks to all of you in this room and those like Evie who came before, we are able to respond to these challenges. The Federation is made to respond to these challenges. We were made for moments like this.
We were made for moments like this. The Jewish Federation of Greater Ann Arbor, like many organizations, conveners and communities across the United States, were made for moments like this. Our pillars are foundational for both our organization, but really for our community. They are philanthropy, convening, and engagement. How do we give? How do we convene? How do we engage? How do you?
We were made.
We were made.
We were made.
We were made for moments
like this.
We were made for moments like this.
We were made for moments like this.
We were made for moments like this.
We were made for moments like this.
We were made for moments like this. Thank you for making moments like this possible.
Thank you. And now for our keynote. Maybe you have seen Barbara Barb McQuaid ordering the number 13 Sherman's choice at Zingerman's, walking in the Arb, go bluing in the Big House, or listening to her profess at the University of Michigan Law School, her alma mater, where she teaches courses in criminal law, criminal procedure, national security, and data privacy. Or perhaps still, like me, you were or are inspired by her cocktail of clarity and passion as a legal analyst on NBC and MSNBC. Or awed as she served from 2010 to 2017 as the first woman U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Michigan. Our guest this evening is the incomparable, the local, the legend, Barb McQuaid. She is a professor, a legal eagle, and a source of strength and defiance and integrity, even though that appears to be out of fashion these days. Another one of her notable hits is Barb also co-hosts the incredibly popular podcast, Sisters in Law, a pitch-perfect team of political legal masterminds. So on this podcast, they pull back the curtain on how government and legal systems actually work, fighting corruption and giving us their rulings on the latest developments across politics, law, and culture. This podcast has been taking their show on the road, including to Chicago, where my mother Joyce, hello, and her friend Sue Falcon saw it. This is what they had to say. She pranced out wearing a Cubs hat. I do not know if she changes her favorite sports with each city. She might have loved Chicago hot dogs unless that was someone else. She moved me because she was part of a group of other female attorneys who were knowledgeable, non-competitive, and spoke specifically about their specialties. I loved that she travels and talks to us. Her intellect was astonishing. Tonight, sans Cub hat, and in this unwieldy election season, it is most apt to have Professor Barb McQuaid here with us to discuss her front row, truth-telling and unsettling book, Attack from Within, How Disinformation is Sabotaging America. The book documents the ways that political opportunities and profiteers use disinformation as a weapon. Following her remarks, Deborah Chop, co-VP of the Jewish Federation Board and law professor and colleague of Barb McQuaid, will facilitate a Q&A. Barb.
Decky, thank you so much for that very nice introduction. Oh, I think of all the accolades, my favorite was Cocktail of Clarity. Did she say that? Can I get one of those? I am so honored to be with all of you tonight because I'm not sure that there is any group who more in history has been targeted by disinformation than Jewish people. And so I think you understand as acutely as anyone how this problem is manifesting itself and the very serious harms that we face as a result. I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes about some of the ideas in my book, and then my colleague Deborah Chop is going to moderate some questions, because that's my favorite part. I really look forward to answering your questions about anything. We can talk about what I've discussed, we can talk about the book, we can talk about MSNBC, we can talk about what Rachel Maddow really wears under the desk. I've seen it. But I look forward to that. Well, let me just tell you a little bit about the book, and thank you all so much. It was my pleasure to meet some of you and sign, and if you didn't get a chance to signature, I'd be very happy to sign afterwards as well. But I wrote this book really as a result of some of the work that I've done throughout my career in national security. Before I was a law professor, I was a federal prosecutor, and my area of focus was national security. And you know, back then we were looking at Al-Qaeda and ISIS and Hezbollah and lots of other threats to the world, which continue to be threats to the world. But one of the things that has taken up a growing area of concern for me is this threat of disinformation. And I know you teach a course at Michigan Law School in national security, and each year a larger and larger portion of my syllabus is occupied by this topic of disinformation. In fact, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security now says that the greatest threat to the homeland is disinformation. It is a weapon that is being used to influence America, to undermine confidence in our elections, to harm democracy, public safety, and national security. And that's why I wanted to write a book about it that I hope is accessible to ordinary people of intellect and good faith, so that we can identify the tactics of disinformation in hopes that if we can see it and recognize it, we are less likely to be manipulated by some of these tactics of disinformation. So let me talk a little bit about some of those things, the tactics. The tactics of disinformation today are very much the same as the tactics that we have seen throughout history. The mechanisms for delivery have changed with social media and 24/7 cable news, but the themes and the ideas are exactly the same as they have been throughout history. And once you see them, I'm sure you know some of them, but once you see them, you know, like I watched the debate with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and like, there's that one, and there's that one, and there's that one. You see them everywhere. It's sort of like when you learn a new word, you hear it everywhere you go. The same is true with these tactics of disinformation. So what are they? One of them is declinism. This idea that the world is going downhill, our country is in ruins, everything is terrible, it's awful, everything is bad, bad, bad. And the more you hear that things are bad, the more you begin to believe that things are bad. This is one of the tactics that Hitler wrote of in Mein Kampf and used in Germany to rise to power. He talked about after World War I, when the economy was poor, that Germany was the laughingstock of the world, that there was great shame in the German people, and everything was bad and terrible, terrible. Because when everything is bad, you can say extreme times call for extreme measures. And that is what certainly Hitler seized the opportunity to suspend the Constitution in Germany and seize power and do all kinds of things that people could not have even imagined even a decade before. So declinism is something we are hearing in our society today, right? I mean, look at Donald Trump's first inaugural, which I think George W. Bush referred to as, that was some weird shit. But he talked of American carnage, of cities in ruins, right? He still talks about cities that are in, using rat-infested, rodent-infested cities, talking about how crime is on the rise, when in fact, data shows that crime is down. In America, frankly, there's kind of been no better time to be in America. We have high rates of employment. The Dow Jones Industrial Average goes up and up and up. Inflation is high and prices are high, but that's what happens in an economy that is growing. And we need to do things to adjust that with the Fed and the interest rate and other kinds of things. Infant mortality is down, more people than ever are going to college. What is it that is causing people to believe that our country is in such bad shape? This talk of declinism. Another thing that declinism allows to do, of course, is to blame other people and to create division in society. Because if everything is bad, then someone must be at fault. For Hitler, of course, those people were the Jewish people. We can blame all our problems, this declining economy, on Jewish people who own all the businesses and control all the media. It's all their fault. Today, depending on who it is spouting this disinformation, the scapegoats might be Jewish people, it might be immigrants, it might be the LGBTQ community. Whatever it is, these are people that we use to stoke division in society. It's us versus them, Republican versus Democrat. When it comes to immigrants, my gosh, lately we're hearing these lies about Haitian immigrants eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Missouri, and repeating them. I'm sorry, Springfield, Ohio. Thank you. In Springfield, Ohio. I'm looking at Joan Lowenstein and thinking of Missouri. In Springfield, Ohio, what is it? They're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the pets of the people who live there. Not true, completely baseless. But in the same way, Donald Trump talks about immigrants as animals and vermin, and they're bringing in people from prisons and insane asylums. It is all an effort to stoke division in society. And it preys on something else, another tactic, which is fear. They are going to take what is rightfully yours. The cultivating fear of immigrants or brown people, black people, people who are not like us. When you hear this othering, that's another tactic that should hit the alarm bells. Why are people saying these things? It's all about division. When people pretend they cannot pronounce the first name of Kamala Harris, I mean, her little nieces came out and explained it, right? It's Kama like in a sentence, and la like la 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 when you sing Kamala. And yet, we hear political leaders repeatedly, and I believe deliberately, mispronounce her name to other her. Kamala, however they want to say it. David Perdue, who's running for re-election in Georgia in 2020, made a big show of Kamala Harris. Who knows how to pronounce her name anyway? Kamala Lala, Ramalama Ding Dong, ha ha ha. Big joke. And why is it a joke? Because he can other her and make her look like someone who is different from the rest of us. And so these are some of the tactics of disinformation. Another classic tactic is to undermine those who might be your critics. Who might those be? the press, the media, right? Hitler referred to the press in Germany as the Lügenpresse, the lying press. Today, we hear Donald Trump refer to the media as the enemy of the people. Because if I can undermine public confidence in the media, then when they inevitably criticize me, I can say, well, you know, all along, we all know that they can't be believed. Other institutions that are there to protect us from authoritarian leaders are also undermined by people who traffic in disinformation. The courts, law enforcement, the career civil service, scientists, medicine, all of these things have come under attack in recent years, right? The CDC and Dr. Fauci. Why do we undermine those people? So we can't believe them anymore. Donald Trump, I believe, wanted to convince the American people that COVID would go away, I think he said by Easter, right? Why was that? Because he wanted the economy to do well in a year when he was facing re-election. And so in order to do that, he had to convince people you can't believe the CDC and Dr. Anthony Fauci and other experts and doctors who are telling you that this is a serious disease and we need to take precautions against it. Degrading our institutions. One of the things that Donald Trump did toward the end of his term in office was to pass something referred to as Schedule F of the civil service regs. Schedule F was something that allowed the president to hire and fire at his pleasure anyone in the civil service who had any policy-making role. He lost the election. Joe Biden quickly reversed that before it was able to be implemented. But you can bet that if he is elected again, it will come back, and it is part of this Project 2025 that has been promulgated by the Heritage Foundation. It would make 50,000 members of the civil service political appointees instead of career professionals like the scientists and the doctors and the engineers and the people who control the power grid and the environment and the EPA and the CDC. If you are not loyal to the leader, you will lose your job. One of the things that has been the great bulwark in this country against overreaching leaders is the career civil service. You know, it used to be back in the 17 and 1800s that people got these positions based on spoils. It was not a career civil service, but something called the Pendleton Act created the career civil service so that we have people in our government who are there based on merit, not based on politics, and who stay throughout administrations regardless of who's in charge. With this Project 2025 and Schedule F, that's going to be gone because those critics are people who might prevent a leader from doing what he wants to do. So these are some of the tactics of disinformers, authoritarians throughout history. But what's different today, and one of the things that I believe makes this problem so acute, is the technology that allows people to spread it instantly and to reach all corners of the world. So social media, bless you, allows any one of us to send a message. It can reach millions of people. We can do so instantly, and we can do so anonymously. Anybody remember this? One of my favorite New Yorker cartoons is this one where there's two dogs, one sitting at a computer. This is like from the 90s. One sitting at a computer and another one sitting next to him, and the one at the computer says to the other one, you know, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. I like that one. I also like the other one where the guy's on the phone and he says, how about never? Is never good enough for you? Is never, can we do it? Never? That's my other favorite one. If you're trying to schedule something, it can be so hard. But, you know, on the internet, nobody knows your dog. On the internet, nobody knows you're a Russian. Nobody knows you're a political operative. And so people can say things online that purport to be something they are not. One of the things I assign to my students in my national security class is the Mueller report, the report Robert Mueller wrote when he was investigating connections between the Trump campaign and Russia. And I don't assign it for what he did or did not find about the Trump campaign, but I assign it to learn about the tactics that Russia used during the 2016 campaign and that have only become more sophisticated today. So in 2016, what we now know is that Russian operatives at the Internet Research Agency used social media to create false persona online pretending to be ordinary Americans, but then sending messages on behalf of Russia to stoke division in society, to influence the election in favor of Donald Trump, and to undermine public confidence in democracy. And so many months before the election, they created all these personas online. They had Army of Jesus, they had the United Muslims of America, the Coal Miners of America, Tennessee GOP, Blacktivist, all kinds of, Heart of Texas, all kinds of, across the political spectrum, and growing their base of followers by saying things they believed people with that particular affinity would like seeing. You know, Army of Jesus would just say things like, love your neighbor. What can you do today? What would Jesus do? You know, and people are following and joining. And they also really drove the numbers also by buying ads that sent people back and amplifying with bots, you know, artificial intelligence created accounts to really lift the followers for these accounts. And then as the election approached, they used it to push their messages, stoking division on society, right? Against, and whatever those fault lines in society are, abortion, immigration, guns, right? Saying things that are very divisive about those things to drive people apart. And then, you know, pushing their favored candidate, Blacktivist, who by now had garnered hundreds of thousands of followers on social media, started saying things like, you know, Hillary Clinton has never done anything for our community. We should send her a message and stay home on election day. Now, we will never know if people heeded that message, and if so, how many. But imagine you are following that account. You're a black voter in a swing state that got decided by a narrow margin. Even a few people who may have stayed home could have made a difference in the outcome of that election. And now, with artificial intelligence, we are seeing even more sophisticated types of tactics. The Justice Department just 2 weeks ago issued an indictment and took down 32 internet servers that Russia is pushing out that created sites that looked exactly like the Washington Post and Fox News. And they were pushing, in this instance, a lot of information against Ukraine and Vladimir Zelensky, their president. Investors in U.S. have fatigue about Ukraine war, ready to pull out all aid, you know, things like that, that look like genuine articles. We also know, based on an indictment filed out of the Justice Department, that Russia Today was paying a company that in turn hired right-wing social media influencers to publish pro-Russian content on their social media sites. They claim they had no idea that Russia was behind it. Perhaps that is true, but they did know that they were being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to post content that was pro-Russia and anti-Ukraine. And so, there are people out there who I think, as we said, are willing to profit off of false information or willing to traffic in disinformation when it suits some agenda. So technology is making this problem, I think, all the more acute than ever before. It is harming our democracy. Based on false claims of a stolen election in 2020, we are now seeing all kinds of new laws and new regulations and new rules making it more difficult to vote or to make it difficult to certify election results. 7 states passed laws after 2020 putting more obstacles in the way for voting by mail or absentee voting. In Georgia, they even passed a law making it illegal to provide food or water to someone waiting in line to vote. I mean, think about that. Here in Michigan, I know we've got some people who work out at the art museum on election day, where students show up and can register and vote on the same day. And last year on election day, they were providing blankets and pizza and water and all kinds of things. In Georgia, that would be illegal. And in fact, just on Friday in Georgia, they passed a whole bunch of new regulations that was opposed by their own Republican Secretary of State, saying you were going to throw our elections into chaos, which perhaps seems to be the goal, with lots of new rules, including one about a mandatory hand count in Georgia, which is going to take weeks to finalize the certification of their election there. So it's harming democracy. It is harming our national security. In this country since World War II, it has been our foreign policy to lift up democracies around the world on the theory that when other countries have democratic forms of government, our national security is actually better off because democratic forms of government have fewer wars, they have fewer refugee crises, they give us more and better trade partners, and so part of NATO and other alliances is all about lifting up democracies around the world. And yet, since 2020, we have seen democratic backsliding around the world, in part because of the damage that we have seen here at home through disinformation. When people saw those visuals on January 6th of people attacking our Capitol in an effort to use brute force to prevent the, I was going to say peaceful, but the lawful transition of presidential power, in Russia, a Russian official said, you see, the United States is no longer the world leader in democracy. American democracy is limping on both feet. In China, President Xi said, you see, democracy doesn't work. And after all, democracy isn't the object anyway, prosperity is. And you can have more prosperity when you have a strong government as opposed to democracy where nobody can agree on anything. And so when we falter in our democracy, democracy falters all over the world. And finally, I think disinformation is harming public safety and the rule of law. The rule of law says that we can disagree about whatever it is we want, but when we resolve disputes, we do so in a court of law. And then we respect and obey whatever a court decides. Well, one thing we are seeing now is that when people lose confidence in law enforcement and the courts, they tend to engage in vigilante violence to effectuate the result they want, which is why I believe we are seeing increases in threats and harassment and violence. The hammer attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband, there was an attack on an FBI office in Cincinnati the day after Donald Trump accused the FBI of planting evidence at his Mar-a-Lago home. That man posted on social media, every patriot needs to shoot FBI agents on sight. He went to the FBI office with an assault weapon and body armor. He got chased away and was killed in a standoff later that day with law enforcement officials. There have been assassination attempts on Donald Trump. I think this whole climate of violence and vigilante violence doesn't care who's spouting the rhetoric. I think that this conversation causes people to decide to take the law into their own hands and makes us less safe. The plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer here in Michigan, and of course the attack on our Capitol on January 6th. And I worry very much about where that leaves us in the future. I am pleased to say that the longest chapter in my book is the chapter on proposed solutions, because it doesn't have to be this way. I know I've painted a very bleak picture for you. But we, in a democracy, have the power to change these things. And if we stop believing that everything's bad and everything's going downhill and we have to cede our power to others to tell us what to do, we have the power to correct this and to change this. We have the power to regulate social media, and I'm not talking about the content, which is protected by the First Amendment, but the algorithms, the way they scrape our data our private data, the way they micro-target us, all of those things can be the subject of regulation to these false. Avoid taking the bait. When people try to suck us into these us versus them kind of debates, we can rise above, right? We can find the joy in democracy and in spirited debate and not hate people just because they disagree with us on our views, but work together to strive toward a more perfect union. I think all of those things are things that we have the power to do. So I'm going to leave it there so that we can take some questions from you with Deborah Chopp. But let me just leave you with this, that there are people out there who I think are more wedded to their political tribe than they are to the truth. But I think all of us have to have clear eyes, and we can't pile on when somebody says something that is false. You know, all those people at the Democratic convention who are laughing along at the J.D. Vance couch jokes, they're in on it too, right? We have to rise above. We have to recognize truth for what it is, accurate information, even when it hurts our position, because if we choose to favor our political tribe over the truth, we will constantly be at war with one another. And so let me ask you that you pledge that you will choose truth over tribe. Look at refill. Is that my cocktail of competence?
I think it is. Thank you so much, Barb. Okay, I get to get us started. So you said that you wanted this book to be accessible, and I want you to know that I drove 6 teenage boys to Cedar Point yesterday. Not randos, one of them was mine. And your book is so accessible that I sat down on a chair in Sandusky, Ohio, and I read your entire book. Like, it was captivating and really disturbing and really, really good.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so it reads, like, I'm in awe of you, and it reads as if it was a fully formed idea in your head that you just effortlessly spilled out on paper. I'm sure that's not the case because I've done some writing, so I know that can't be the case, and you must have done some research, and I'm wondering what surprised you, if anything, in your research, and I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, you're very kind, Deborah. Deborah is my colleague at Michigan Law School, and what a kind colleague she is to be here tonight. The part that was newest to me and most surprising to me was sort of the cognitive forces that we all have that make this stuff work. I have a background in national security and law, so those parts of it were perhaps less surprising. But why these things work, right? I mean, we're all smart people, we read, and yet people buy into these things. And I think the one thing that was most surprising about all of that is that because of this concept called cognitive dissonance, and it takes a lot of forms, but anybody who's involved in psychology, I see some nods, you're probably familiar with this term, but one of the ways it manifests itself is that we tend to want to when we have someone we like, we want their message to be something we also like. And so when someone tells us something we don't want to hear, it creates this tension in our brains. And so we either need to change that message or change the way we feel about that person. And as a result of that, we don't like it. We don't like people who tell us what we don't want to hear, right? I mean, don't blame the messenger. We've all heard that before. But as a result of that, because we all know that deep down, it causes people to say things and behave in ways they don't even believe because they want to signal to others that I'm part of the tribe. And so, when we had people like Ted Cruz and Josh Hawley, senators who are, Ivy League educated, smart guys, were voting against certification on election day. They certainly knew better, but they wanted to signal to people that we're part of the tribe. We're one of you. We want to advance this agenda. When Republicans refer to the Democrat Party, like they know that's not what it's called, right? It's the Democratic Party. But they say it because they want to signal that they are part of the far-right MAGAverse. When people laugh at the J.D. Vance couch jokes, right? They are saying, I'm in on the joke. I'm part of this group. I think, sometimes we even see it among our students when they don't want to say something that might be unpopular in class. We might be talking about some hot button issue, affirmative action. And you'll see people, you'll raise a question, and not everybody must agree with this, but people are kind of, hiding. And I think it's because of that cognitive dissonance. I don't want to say something that might be unpopular with my classmates because then maybe they won't like me so much anymore. And I think that is part of being a responsible member of society, that sometimes we have to say, we can say it nicely, but we have to stick our neck out and be willing to debate. My guess is we don't all agree on every issue that's out there, and we need to be willing to engage with it so that we can find truth and reach solutions or compromise, right? Politics is the art of compromise. Maybe we need to compromise on some things. And so that, to me, I think was the most interesting and surprising, was just some of those cognitive forces that I didn't know much about before.
Thank you. I will now open it up to questions, so I'm reserving the last one for myself.
Oh, alrighty.
Hi, thank you. Have you found that since your book came out, there seems to be a book a week coming out. Have you found any of the subsequent ones perhaps add perspective to the points that you made?
Yes, and you know, it's almost hard to keep up with all of the great books that are out there. But there are two authors who've written new books that I like a lot. They are, let's see if I can get their names right. Their first book was called How Democracies Die, which I quote extensively in my book. They are Harvard political scientists. And then they wrote another one called Tyranny of the Minority. And so interesting. So How Democracies Die is a very interesting book that talks about these sort of edging toward authoritarianism, undermining the institutions that can provide a check. And their other book, which comes after mine, Tyranny of the Minority, talks about how, you know, through the Electoral College and through disinformation and through gerrymandering, minority groups in this country are controlling politics. You know, the Republican Party is a shrinking party, and by cheating, is working to hold on to power. But one of the things that they raised in their book, How Democracies Die, that I did cite among solutions, is the importance of tolerance and forbearance in society. And there are some in our current government who are using power to crush their opponent because they can. I might submit that even our Supreme Court is doing that to some extent. Because they have the power and they can, they are now overturning precedent, which is not how it's supposed to work. Or, you know, Mitch McConnell saying, I'm not going to give a vote to Barack Obama's nominee for the Supreme Court because I can. You know, it's that kind of tolerance for the opposing party and forbearance. Just because I have power doesn't mean I must use it. That is how democracies die. And so a solution is to respect those things and care as much more about our country than we do about a political party. But I think it's Daniel Levitsky and Steven Ziblatt are the authors of those books. Is it? Did I switch them around? All right, Levitsky and Ziblatt.
Hi, Barb.
Hi.
You mentioned about your background in national security, but you're way too humble, and people should remember that you're also an expert in counterterrorism, and as U.S. Attorney, you really prosecuted some actual terrorists, like the underwear bomber and Razmia Odeh, who was a Palestinian terrorist who was deported because she was responsible for the death of 2 Americans in Jerusalem in a bombing, and then lied to the U.S. and coming in, and she was deported. So you know about terrorism. So from an aspect of about your new area of disinformation, can you explain why college students all over the country are going around with terrorist flags and terrorist costumes and supporting terrorism?
Thank you, Joan. That's such a good question, and the answer is no, I don't know if I can do it. I have some theories, though. I mean, one is every college kid loves a good protest, right? So I think there's that they're going to get out and protest. I think that there has been disinformation pushed on social media, advancing an agenda that students have followed. I also think there is this interesting idea that they have viewed the Arab-Israeli conflict through the lens of American racism, and this idea of oppressor versus oppressed, and for some reason view the Jewish people not as the oppressed who have fled to a promised land, but as the oppressor of the Palestinians. And so I think that some combination of all of those factors has fed into it, but certainly they are very confused about the idea that while you have a right to speak, you do not have a right to harass or threaten others, and you do not have a right to occupy buildings, and you do not have a right to damage property. Because I know so many of people who got arrested or disciplined are outraged that there has been a consequence to their conduct. And so That's the best I can do, but I don't know if you have any other thoughts on it, because it is disturbing to see not only students, but even faculty members who have written some letters that I have found surprising and bearing very little resemblance to the world I recognize. I don't know for a fact, but it would seem to me that in light of the fact that we do have disinformation on social media about Ukraine and about US elections, about Taiwanese elections, about every other conflict in the world, it would surprise me if there is not.
Thank you. I'm getting my steps in.
Good evening. That was great. I need to turn it on? Or? No, it's on. Hello.
Hello, I can hear you.
So much of my faith in democracy is tied very closely to my faith in the law. And the last year or so has really destabilized my faith in the law, from the Supreme Court on down. And I mean, given your job, you still have to maintain a good deal of faith in the law. And I guess my question is, if the law is really at the center of our democracy, and we are devolving from that, what is going to hold us together?
Yeah, well, I think it's people. The law is central to our democracy, the rule of law, but it gets administered by human beings who are flawed. I think our allegiance to the law is critically important to protecting everything else that goes on in our society. But, you know, you look at the Supreme Court, which I still believe is a very important institution. But I think we have some flawed individuals there who are doing exactly what we just spoke of, which is overreaching their power. And I'll just give you an example. The case of Dobbs that overturned Roe versus Wade. Regardless of where you stand on the issue of abortion, it was a settled precedent for 50 years. During their confirmation hearings, all of those justices said, of course I recognize that this is not just a precedent, but a super precedent. And I have no intention of overturning it. I can't do that because it is a precedent. In the law, there are some exceptions where precedents should be overturned. Basically 4 rules. One is if our understanding of the facts in the law have changed, we should overturn it, and that happens from time to time. If the rule has not worked very well in practice, you know, seemed like a good idea when we decided it, but it hasn't really worked very well. If other law has developed up and around it such that it is no longer consistent with those other laws, maybe we ought to change it to harmonize. Or if people have not really relied on this rule in their own lives, that would be a basis for overturning it. By all 4 of those factors, there was no basis for overturning Roe versus Wade. What Justice Alito, who wrote the opinion, said was simply, it was egregiously wrong when it was decided, and it's egregiously wrong today, and therefore we overturn it. And I'll tell you, in contrast to that, is a case that was decided called Dickerson when I was a newish prosecutor in the late 1990s, when Chief Justice William Rehnquist was on the court. They took up a case about reviewing Miranda. You know, you probably know from, at least from the cop shows, right? Miranda's, you have the right to remain silent. You have the, and that was long criticized because people would say, that's not in the Constitution. Why is that a right, a constitutional right? And people say, well, it sort of is presumed that if you're going to have a right against self-incrimination, you ought to know what that right is so that you can invoke it, so that you don't get coerced. So when the court took up that decision, a lot of people were speculating, well, it's the end of Miranda. They're going to overturn it because the conservatives don't like Miranda. But what William Rehnquist wrote instead is, today we affirm Miranda. Were I writing on a clean slate, I would say there's no basis for this in the law. But however, I'm not writing on a clean slate. This is precedent, and we don't have a different understanding of the facts in the law, and the law has not developed in conflict with it. In fact, it's developed in concert with it. It is not contrary to common sense, or it's workable, and people have relied on it in their lives, and it's working pretty well. So no reason to overturn it. We're stuck with it. It's precedent. Stare decisis. That is what it means to practice forbearance and tolerance. And we're not seeing that today. I don't, but I think the institutions are there. We just need to make sure that we have better people who are following them.
Thank you. Okay, we are running out of time, so I'm going to add.
I need to be faster in my answers.
No, it's okay. You are. It's still on. So I'm going to ask my last question. Barb, I loved the chapter on solutions. There were so many, and they were multifaceted and creative and also really practical. But I am the target audience for your book. And I want to know, and probably many people in this room are the target audience for your book, and I want to know, how do we reach people beyond the target audience, and what do you think is most likely to be successful?
Such a good question, because I hear this from time to time about, oh, you know, my Uncle Leo comes to Thanksgiving dinner and he's gone down the rabbit hole. I think there are some people we will never convince. I think there are people who are convinced that the 2020 election is stolen, people who are convinced that, you know, whatever, there's conspiracy theories wherever they look. But I do think that there are people who are reachable, and those are the people I think we need to be able to talk to. I talk in the book about an experience I had where I happened to be traveling in Ireland, my ancestral homeland, during a time when they were voting on a ballot initiative to amend their constitution to permit abortion. In a country that is a Catholic country, official religion, this was a really big deal. And so I thought, ooh, I bet they're really at each other's throats on the street corners over this. Boy, can you imagine if that were going on in the United States? And to my great surprise, it was anything but. People were out campaigning on every street corner, passing out buttons, either yes or no, and they had literature, but they would very politely engage you and would say, would you like to hear more about this? And I would say yes, and they would talk. They were unbelievably cordial to each other. The provision ultimately passed to now legalize abortion in all of Ireland by something like 75% of the voting, which is it passed in every county overwhelmingly. But what was so amazing was the respect they showed toward each other. It was that mutual respect and forbearance. And if someone said, you know, I disagree, they didn't try to get down their throats and yell at them and browbeat them. And I think that's what it takes. You know, the reason we are at each other's throats today is it doesn't have to be that way. We have leaders who are deliberately stoking dissension in society. That is what Russia wants. That is what leaders like Donald Trump want. And so if we can find unity and harmony, and by asking questions, showing curiosity and kindness, I think we will remember that we all have more in common than we do differences.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barb, for being our cocktail of competence and clarity. I think I got a little drunk listening to you, or maybe that was just the wine. And Deborah, thank you for your deft moderation and conversation. But now, to tell us more about this year's campaign, its goals, and its impact, we'd like to bring out this year's campaign co-chairs, Sierra Imwale, and my good friend and fellow Wednesday Night Drink Club member, Larry Adler.
Oh, here we go. All right.
A lot of decking pages in there.
I know. Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Good. Okay. I'm Sierra Imwale, and I'm proud to join Larry Adler as Federation's 2025 campaign co-chair. Thanks. First, I wanted to say that I am so honored to be among so many truly incredible humans. You all are truly an inspiration to me. I grew up in Ann Arbor. My brother, sister, and I were all bar mitzvahed at Temple Beth Emeth. I heard messages my entire life about how important it was to share with and support the Jewish community, but I never truly understood where I fit. I felt not Jewish enough. I felt like I didn't know where to jump in, where to help out, what events to attend. Sort of, you get the picture. So I didn't. I joined communities all over town. I was part of the Junior League, Ellie's Place. I was on the Event on Main, Charles Woodson Foundation for Michigan's Children's Hospital. So I've obviously been very involved in the community for quite some time. And then this summer, Larry asked me to a meeting, and he sold me pretty hard on the Federation and all of the ways the funds we raise make an impact. But I have to say, it was sort of a you had me at hello kind of experience. He could have just said, we need you, and I probably would have just said yes. Because truthfully, this was exactly what I was supposed to do, to rally people to an incredible cause. I'm an organizer, I'm an includer, and I'm a rallier. I'm so excited to be your campaign co-chair this year and to truly make it the best year yet. Here's Larry.
Thank you, Sierra, and thanks to all of you for being the generous donors that make it possible for the Federation to accomplish its important work in our community. This includes the funding of critical Jewish organizations locally and abroad, coordinating and responding to the Jewish community study to plan for the future, convening and engaging our young adults through NextGen, fighting the rising scourge of anti-Semitism, and providing security for our institutions. There are many worthy causes, Jewish and non-Jewish, that deserve your support in this community. But I would submit that the Ann Arbor Jewish Federation is the only entity positioned to take on these critical tasks. I just returned from a trip in Europe where I was reminded over and over again about the story of the Jewish people throughout history. They got comfortable. They felt they were part of society until they weren't. Forced into ghettos, expelled, or facing mass murder, where the only evidence that they were there to begin with are plaques on the buildings and metal squares on the pavement. This happened over a period of time. And one wonders if the signs were there. If they were there, could anything have been done to avert these tragic events? As we see and feel the events that are unfolding around us, what are we prepared to do? I suggest that we do something, whether it is getting involved directly or indirectly through supporting the Federation's annual campaign. The Jewish Federation is the coordinating umbrella that has taken on the role of speaking out against anti-Semitism, whether it is at the City Council, the university, the school board. Through the work of the JCRC, we are building bridges with local and state politicians, as well as other faith leaders. Through your support of Live Secure, local institutional security is being evaluated and strengthened. Our security manager, who is standing outside tonight, is fostering strong and direct ties with local law enforcement so that anti-Semitic acts can be addressed swiftly and in a coordinated manner. An upcoming program in conjunction with the Holocaust Center called, quote, What You Do Matters, end quote, will educate Ann Arbor Police about the dangers of hate detailing the role of the police in Germany in the 1930s leading up to the Holocaust. The Federation is assisting our next generation of parents by fostering political activism in supporting school board candidates who are sensitive to the threat of anti-Semitism. I think most of you know that we're part of a system of 146 federations across the country, and that this past year, this system raised a remarkable $850 million to meet the overwhelming needs in Israel following October 7th. With your contributions to this effort, you supported emergency services, increased mental health resources, cared for evacuees, and ensured Israel's economy stayed afloat in a tumultuous time. By being part of this effort, either directly or through your generous funding, I would suggest that we are doing something. For the 2025 annual campaign, we have set a target for $1.65 million, which is a 5% increase, as well as a goal of $100,000 for Live Secure to secure a one-to-one match from the Federation system, which will sustain community security into the future. I am confident that through your generosity, we will reach and exceed this goal. You have the pledge cards. Please take a few minutes to complete them and think about increasing your generous pledge so that we can reach this goal. And if you have not given to Live Secure, please consider giving an additional pledge. I am confident that this group will kickstart our campaign in a meaningful way and make significant impact in the future of the Ann Arbor Jewish community. Let's do something together. Thank you for the support.
So this is the part of the program where we do pledge cards, and they're in your bags. People are like, where are they? They're in your bags, and yes, right, Rachel, all right. This is the part, I think, we also call this the silent part of the program. You know, Bruce, what I don't like? Silence.
Yeah,
I know.
I know.
I know you remember I started talking like I was when I was 5 months old. And I mean compound sentences, participles, modifiers, I think if I was punctuation, I would be an ellipsis because I would be going and going and going and going. Okay, all right, so let me ask you a question, honey. What punctuation would you be?
What?
Yeah, I know. What punctuation? Like, I'm an ellipsis. I'm going and going. What would you be?
Oh my God,
Yeah.
there were like 468 thoughts in those two sentences.
Okay, like 500. Okay.
So where do I begin?
Yes.
Okay, now what would I be? I would be a period or
okay,
whatever punctuation that just takes a beat, a pause.
Like a dash.
A dash.
A dash, lovely.
A pause means you listen to yourself, Debbie.
Okay, fine. Okay, listen. Got it.
And we want people to pause here to listen to themselves, their inner selves. This is the part of the event where they need to reflect on how much they're going to give or pledge. Give means you're giving now. You're giving us a gift today. Or pledge, or making a pledge to the annual campaign for 2025. Are you not going to say anything?
I'm pausing.
Yeah, Decky might not like silence.
Or kale, or people who kill spiders.
Or kale, or people who kill spiders. But personally, I don't like asking people for money. I know, it kind of goes with the job of being on the board of the Federation and being the co-chair of the allocation committee. But here's the thing. People should know if we, you, me, want to make sure our 20,000 Jewish community members thrive here, we make an annual gift. Did you know that in addition to the $1.56 million we raised here last year, our community also donated $700,000 to the Israel Emergency Fund after October 7th. To me, that means, among many things, our community is incredibly generous, responsive, and able to give more to this community, our community. Here's what I know. Every year, a lot more is requested of the Federation than we are able to allocate. In fact, last year, we were only able to allocate 85% of the ask locally and 80% of the ask to Israel and overseas. If we had more funds, say we moved only 40 to 50% of that $700,000 that we gave to the Israel Emergency Fund, if we moved it into our community, our programs, our brick and mortar, our people, our security, we could just not give more, but we could do more.
You know what I think we should do, honey? I think we should do like an animal fund for like b'nai mitzvahs. Or like if they want to get bar mitzvah, like animals, or like bar mitzvahs. Or...
Yeah, or something like that. Or maybe
That's not gonna
not.
go
Or something like additional services for our seniors.
Better, fine.
More programs for our teens. Better facilities for our kids. Should I go on?
Yes, please.
More kids in our camps. More educational programs. More teachers in our schools.
More teachers, yes. Oh, it's my line.
It's your line.
It's my line. So, right now, if you have not handed a pledge card, this was our silent part. We didn't want to do silent. We want to do a little like Nichols and May. I don't know if that worked. But if you have a pledge card, please let us know. You can pick it up, hold it there. Rachel or myself or Bruce will get the pledge
No,
cards.
I'm going to go fill out my pledge card.
Oh, Bruce is filling out his pledge card. Let's everybody watch Bruce. So he's going to fill out the pledge card right over there, or Marcy can take it here. And I was gonna, we had a little thing that we were going to give you a yoga mat if you were the first one, but we left it in the garage, so we'll have to you and I owe you. But we do have yoga mats to give. Thank you so much, and I want to thank Larry and Sierra. It was lovely. Thank you so much for campaigning. Thank you, Barbara. Grateful.
Hi, I'm Eileen Freed. I'm the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater Ann Arbor, and it is my great privilege to be able to extend some gratitude this evening. On behalf of a grateful community, I thank each of you for being here tonight, for your generosity as you fill out those pledge cards, for your involvement, and for your leadership. Our local Jewish community needs you, and our community in Israel needs you, and you answer the call. I want to thank again Barbara for an insightful presentation, and Deborah for leading a thought-provoking conversation. Thank you to this year's dynamic and entertaining Major Gifts chairs, Decky and Bruce. Bruce, I give you a lot of credit for doing this shtick, for their hard work and insightful contributions. Thank you to Federation's volunteer campaign team led by Larry Adler and Sierra Imwali, and to our professional team, particularly Rachel Wall, Becky Malamed, and our new colleague, Katie Swordlow, who worked so hard to make this evening special. I also want to acknowledge our team member, James Griffin, who recently moved to New England, where his wife got a position. He put a great deal of effort into making this event wonderful for all of us. Our organization is blessed to have wise, talented, and dedicated volunteers, including many of you. You are partners with our professional team in achieving our success. I particularly thank our dedicated and hardworking board of directors, led by board president Marla Linderman-Richelieu. Marla, stand up. There she is. All of us are working together to enhance Jewish life in our community. So please stay tuned to our emails and social media to learn about upcoming events, initiatives, and our impact. Save the date for the main event, Tuesday, November 19th, with New York Times columnist David Brooks. It's sort of a bookend in case you didn't catch that. There will be an opportunity for major and legacy donors to purchase discounted tickets to the intimate pre-glow with our speaker, Mr. Brooks. It's a little bit of a downer right now for a moment, just fair warning. When we met nearly a year ago at the Major Gifts event, just days after Hamas's brutal massacre of Israelis in communities near Gaza, we could not have imagined that we and our Israeli family would still be in this nightmare. That 352 days later, over 100 hostages would still be held in Gaza with no deal in sight. That 100,000 evacuees would still be refugees in their own country, including more than 60,000 under fire in the north. That the war in Gaza would still be ongoing, causing the deaths of Israeli soldiers and innocent civilians. That aerial attacks from Hezbollah, from Lebanon, which have not ceased for the last 11 months, would target communities as far south as the Jezreel Valley, home to our partner community, Moshav Nahalal. With the weight of 365 days of horror rapidly approaching, we hope you will join the community to reflect on the past year and remember those who died and who are still being held hostage. On Sunday, October 6th at the JCC, a full day of programming will include local and nationally recognized art exhibits, live performances, films, and a communal song circle. Then, on October 7th, there will be student-led exhibits at the Diag throughout the day. Observances will conclude with a community vigil, campus and community, local community, on the Diag at 6 o'clock. There are many details on the website. Some of the details for campus are still being worked out, and we will continue to inform you about what is going on, but we really do hope that there is a very strong showing at all of these events to mark this day together as a community. So as we end this evening, we hope you'll stay and continue the conversation and be with each other in community, which we really need at these times. A couple of banal notes, but important. Please help us recycle your name tags as you drop them in a container on your way out. And also, we will continue to collect pledge cards if you have not already handed one to the staff. Now, as a community, I invite you to stand and join our Shaliach Amichai, our Shinshinim Danielle and Lahav, and me in singing Hatikva.
say